It is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce you Ankush Chaudhary, Principal Security Advisor, Worldwide Public Sector, AWS, who will be sharing his knowledge about governance at scale.
All right, thank you. Fantastic. All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone. Governance at scale. So what we will be looking at today in this session is that how organizations need to structure their governance as they grow and scale, right? So as your AWS accounts grow, as your number of services that you consume grow, you need to ensure that there's proper governance around. Now, AWS has a new approach on how you can meet these challenges, right? So governance at scale helps organizations meet their objectives around account management, cost enforcement, and also how to achieve security and compliance through automation, all managed through centralized tool sets, right? And it also aligns your overall organization hierarchy with the AWS multi-account structure with management done through very intuitive interfaces. So we're going to look at some of the native capability that AWS offers within the cloud that you can use. And we are also going to look at the AWS APN partner solutions that are available as well. So this is a common pattern that we see with the customers who are adopting AWS, right? When you start with AWS, your operational footprint on AWS scales. And when that scales, there's also the need for you to control and manage your account management, your cost enforcement, your policy enforcement. Now, the benefit of the cloud is you can launch hundreds of services, right? With a single API call, you can have hundreds of virtual machines that can be launched, which is fantastic. But at the same time, you also need to be aware of the risks that it can pose with regards to overspending and also risk associated with the misconfigurations. Now, what organizations need to do that they must meet these compliance and governance requirements. And we provide the tool sets, we provide the native capability that can help you achieve those objectives, right? So AWS developed these set of guidelines, and we do have a white paper on governance at scale that gives the best practices and the guidelines combined with checklists which can provide you prescriptive guidelines on how to use the technology and the technology partners that we have available. And we'll look at some of those examples later today. So we see governance, if not implemented, tends to block or slow things down, right? And the multiple reasons for that. So one of the things that we often see is that every customer is doing their own thing, right? Someone is trying to engage third-party professional services or AWS professional services. They are trying to build costly but not so uniform solutions. They are buying multiple products, and then they realize that these products essentially don't live in harmony. Then there are these multi-account best practices which sometimes not aligned with every organization's requirements, and that can add more challenges to the customer's requirements. The other aspect is we find prescriptive guidance around governance is missing, right? And there are native toolings that is available on AWS, but we tend to find that this native tooling is inadequate for very large customers. So what the customers are really looking for is saying, I want this big button that I can press, which can really give me the prescriptive guidance I want. So what is enterprise cloud governance, right? So you all be familiar with the enterprise governance, within your own data centers, you know how to do the governance aspect, but there are a few things that differ when you move to the cloud. And one of the aspects is definitely the cost component, right? So in your data center, you have the infrastructure that you have bought. You can only provision whatever you have already purchased. And if there are software licensings and other aspects, you do have a procurement vehicle internally that can drive that. But not on the cloud, right? If you don't have proper controls on the cloud, every action that you take can have a cost impact, right? So that's one thing that really differs in governance in the cloud. The second aspect that we see is the ability in the cloud around automation and orchestration, right? Now, there is a lack of automation that we typically find in the traditional data centers, but at the same time, that is available in a very robust way on the cloud, which we need to leverage in order to meet our compliance and governance requirements. So we want to walk you through a journey on how customers typically start with the cloud, right? How do they look and weigh in their governance options, and then we'll finally lead to a solution that's probably something that you can apply with your environments. So the typical cloud journey that we see with the customers is that they would start with a single account. They are using one or two AWS services. They're trying it out. Or perhaps it's the web applications are the first one to go. But we still see the governance is manually done. Now, as they get more and more used to the cloud, they start adopting more services, right? They start taking more services. And depending on what your organization structure is like, you would then tend to have more AWS accounts. But still, we see that the governance component is manual, right? So let's do a deep dive in looking at a traditional approach of what we see from an adoption perspective. So I'm going to take an example of higher education. Now, higher education tends to be highly federated, and they have decentralized IT, right? And every department, the research groups, they have their own source of funding, and we also see they have access to a wide range of technologies, and the latitude they can afford. And what they find is that the self-service nature of AWS, combined with the autonomy that these departments have, they tend to be also the early adopters of the cloud, right? And now when they embark on their cloud adoption, what their central IT departments see, who are running on their own, trying to build their own data centers, and they look at what the departments are doing with the autonomy they have, is that they need to stop doing this, saying, we can't be building data centers, and when we are seeing all the departments who are not consuming these services, so they embark on the AWS cloud, where they typically start with creating a master account, and then they would give the ability to different departments and research groups to have their own AWS accounts, give them the flexibility to launch their own test, dev, prod networks as they want to. So which is fantastic, because it really gives them the ability to use services, and now they have some proper governance in place. But in this top-down approach, what we also see is that most of the IT departments end up replicating their on-premise architecture onto the cloud, right? So that's what they're used to. They're used to doing things in a certain way, and they start replicating that. And security and compliance then becomes big. And when security and compliance become an issue and a concern, then we see all these departments who were given the flexibility to use AWS services, all of a sudden are under scrutiny, and they cannot use these cloud services. So they have a list of approved services they can and they cannot use, which gets to the question to the department saying, hey, wasn't this the reason that we moved from a traditional data center onto the cloud so we can innovate, we can adopt new cloud services, and all of a sudden we cannot? So this is where a good governance approach is really important. We really need to ensure that you can meet your internal compliance objectives, you can scale, you can adopt new AWS services and APIs that you want to use, and at the same time, you have the governance and the visibility that you need, right? So let's look at some of the trade-offs and some of the adoption patterns that we see from a governance perspective. Now, a very common approach for these IT departments when they look at controlling the usage of the cloud, they would insert a layer of abstraction, right? So they would list the services, whether it is the compute, the storage, the databases, analytics, whatever they deem is going to be suitable and approved by the departments to be used. So they will list all them as a service catalog that is available. And they will also offer services like CloudFormation, which can then automatically provision these services. Now, which is fantastic, right? So we see that this is a normal pattern for most of the organization who are entering the AWS adoption, and they want to put some controls around it. And we also find that there is a high level of assurance that is offered, right? Because everything is deployed through a centralized catalog. You have a CloudFormation template that is deploying it. So the chances of anything going wrong are minimalistic because it's all baked in. But on the other side, what we also find that this approach does not seem to work well, because now you're letting your IT departments saying, hey, we want to give you a first-class service to enable all these cloud services, but we cannot make them available to you, right? Because you have to go through this layer of abstraction. And the other issue with most of these cloud broker services is that given the pace of innovation that AWS has, we typically see the brokers are catching up, right? Not all cloud services would be available through them, and then that would, again, put you on the back foot. Now, the other aspect, what the organizations really need to do, and as they mature through their governance cycle, is that they want to leverage more and more on automation. How can I automatically deploy security policies, account policies? How can I ensure that I give the flexibility to my departments and give them the service they deserve without compromising any of the innovation that we really want to promote? So those are the trade-offs that we typically see that the organizations go through when they're looking at adopting an enterprise cloud governance model. So some of the key things to consider, right? So when you embark on your cloud governance model, there are a few things that you need to understand, a few things that you should be able to get a better view of, so that when you build your governance models, you know what are some of the things and some of the aspects that you need to be looking at. So entry points is definitely one key one. How are your users trying to access the cloud environment, whether they're coming internally. If you have a hybrid environment, they're coming from the internet, they are using CLI, APIs, and so on. What are the common services that are being used? The reason that you need to know the common services, so you can then apply the relevant security policies on those common services. What kind of networking is going to be used? Is it the VPCs that we are going to be using, which is a virtual private cloud? Are you going to have inter or intra VPC? What kind of traffic can go in and out? What can talk to what and what cannot talk to what, right? So that's really important from the considerations. Whether it's going to be a hybrid deployment, are you going to have direct connects from your AWS cloud to your traditional data center, right? Security services is really important. Do you have a shared security services model? Do you have an environment where every time there is a workload going in, you need to have the visibility, you need to collect the logs, and you have a shared model that can provide you threat detection capability? The other thing that's really, really key, and I'm going to use one of the examples for one of the partners that we have, is to have governance risk and compliance, right? You want to get to your ATOs faster, your authority to operate as fast as you can, and you need the tooling that can assist you. So you need to get the visibility into that aspect as early as possible, so you can build it into your overall governance structure. And then the last one is definitely using the automation to provision the accounts that you need to. And I've got an example where we'll just walk you through the steps on how typically in an organization where you build the governance at scale portal, it really helps to streamline the entire process. So once you get an idea of what these key areas are that you need to concern, that helps you answer the 3 common questions that we need to look at, right? Now, the first one is that we need to determine the level of access and the state of your users, not just the state of your users, but also you need to understand what level of access they have across your organization, right? That visibility is really, really important. If you don't have the visibility, you can't control, you can't manage, and you can't act, right? So that's the key. The second aspect is that how can you adhere to IT budgets? Now, we know cloud is pay-per-use, right? So every time you go in there, you basically consume the services, you pay for it. And it's really, really important. And one of the common questions I get from the governments is that, I want to stick to a budget, right? I want fixed price. I want something that stays $2,000 and doesn't move away from $2,000. So how can we enforce those costs into the cloud as well, right? So that's really key. And the last one is on the security and compliance. How can I automate? How can I automate deployments? If, for example, there is a web-based application, your typical 3-tier architecture where you have the web application and database, I've got common set of requirements from a security standpoint. I have approved an Amazon machine image that can be used. How can I ensure that all of those things get applied automatically without having intervention from the human element, right? So which is really important because not only you want to implement those, but you also want to continuously monitor those, right? So 3 principles that we're going to look at. The first one is account management, on how you're going to streamline, how you're going to standardize the provisioning and the management of your accounts. How do you going to roll the IAM policies, the account-specific policies, so you have the necessary guardrails in place. The next, we're going to look at the cost enforcement. So we want cost enforcement in real time, right? If I have a user who's exceeding the budget, I need to be alerted, and I need to be able to take measures that I should in order to enforce that cost control. And the last one is that how I can accelerate my security. How can I have continuous management, configuration management? How I can ensure that the right policies and approved policies are going in, right? So let's walk through the design of these services. And then I will talk about some of the tooling that is available from our APN partners, which can actually help you in this objective. Right? So account management, right? So the first one is really important, that for you to understand your organizational hierarchy. So there are organizations who would want a single account. There are organizations who would want multiple accounts. So really important that you have an intuitive interface that lets you map out your organization. So you can use the AWS native capability of AWS organizations, where you can create a parent-child relationship. So on the top, you have the AWS master billing account, and then depending on how your organization is structured, you have different departments, and each department will have their own projects, and you should be able to create the policies around, am I going to consolidate all the admin access? Are we using single sign-on, right? If we are using single sign-on, I need to ensure that every time there is a new account created, the consolidated admin function, the policies related to the single sign-on and federation are going in, right? It's really important that I'm automatically provisioning them and I'm not getting any manual intervention. And every time if someone tries to create something that is not approved, it basically stops them from doing so as well, right? And that's how you maintain not just the enforcement, but you also control that aspect as well. So we talked about landing zones. I think Steve in this previous session was talking about landing zones. Together with landing zones, we also have the compliance quick stats. So these are available for PCI, NIST, DoD. They have security baked into them already. You can lift these compliance quick stats, and you can use them as a starting point, and then you add more security capability depending on your individual organizational requirements. The next aspect is on the cost, right? So again, you need to map out your organization, which you have done in the first step. The next step is very important to say, OK, I've got $15,000 of budget a month, and how I'm going to distribute this budget across to my different departments. And then the departments have the autonomy to say which projects they're going to implement and what budget they're going to allocate. So not only it gives them the flexibility to allocate the budgets, but also enforce those budgets. So if they have a budget that runs over, they will have alerting that will give them the view where they can throttle the IAM policies, and then they can control the usage as well, right? So we don't want the bill shocks. And I have multiple examples of customers who I talk to who would say, I have a developer who was working on Lambda. He's testing. He goes on leave. Forgets to turn off the triggers, we come back, we have a $15,000 bill, right? So those kind of things don't happen if you have proper governance in place, right? It's really, really important on how we control that. And the last one, and the most important one, is security, right? So you have regulatory requirements, you have internal compliance requirements. You need to ensure that you are using pre-approved security policies that can go in and can be implemented automatically, right? We don't want anyone, and we keep stressing on this fact that you need to move humans away from the systems. You need to move humans away from the data as well, and that's what gives you more security, because automation can give you things with a high level of quality. It can give you with a high level of consistency, right? And then when you are automating these deployments, it essentially also becomes really easy for your operations team to be able to do their tasks, right? Very important for your GRC tools, right? So if you're using governance, risk, and compliance tools, you need to ensure that they can inherit the system-specific policies and controls, the SSPs and the SSCs, as we call them, and provide you that real-time monitoring capability. So your operations team, if and when there is an issue, they are alerted and they can take the corrective actions. So these are the 3 key design components, whether you are building something on your own, whether you are looking at a partner to provide you the capability. So these are the key building blocks and the design considerations that we need to keep in mind. So let's take you through an example use case to put all these principles in action. So here we have an employee, John. He wants to start developing an application on AWS, and he requests for an account. So the example is from one of the tools that we're going to talk about. So it's CloudTemer, that is one of our technology partners. You essentially get access to the management portal, where the manager can essentially say, all right, is a development account. So here are the policies. Here is the template for the development account. These are the services this person can use. He's requesting for a $5,000 budget for a month. Nope, I'm not going to give them 5,000. We'll give them only 1,000 or 2,000. And here are the IAM policies. Multi-factor authentication is mandated, and any other specific IAM policies are going to be applied as well, right? So he approves that. And once that is approved, everything happens automatically. No one has to do anything. The entire account is managed, provisioned, security is applied, roles are created, and an account is established. Next, we not only want to create everything automatically, we also want to make sure that the monitoring is done automatically, right? So we have the monitoring in place for both security. We have monitoring in place for the cost as well. So all the triggers go to the relevant internal stakeholders who can then take corrective actions if and when anything goes wrong. So what are your solution options, right? So we understood, what are the 3 key building blocks that we need. We know the process, that how we need to do the design considerations. So what and how you can go on your journey on building a governance at scale solution. So 2 options. The first one is that there is native capability available in the cloud, right? In AWS cloud, so you can develop your own governance model. You can grow your own understanding of how the APIs work, and then you can start building and use resource tagging. So again, there's multiple capability that's available in the cloud. It's a little bit of hard work, but depending on if that's something that you want to embark on, is always an option for you to build something on your own. The second option is that you can use our AWS APN partners. So you can use CloudTemer, you can use Cloud Conformity, and we have Dome9, Turbot. There are a few partners who provide similar capability who can then help you in achieving these objectives, right? You can do your account management, cost enforcement, security, and compliance. All products differ in one way or the other. It really depends on an individual organization, on what you seem fit for yourself. You can use one of those. You can use the exact software for governance, risk, and compliance, right? So we do have presence from some of our partners today as well. So Telos being one. So this can help you with your automated SSP artifact generation, right? So if you are in a compliance GRC specific environment, you would know how important that is, and to have automation capability around it. And finally, you do have access to our AWS professional services, right? We have landing zones available. We have services that are available to you. We can also take you through our AWS cloud adoption framework, depending on what stage of cloud adoption you are. So a quick look at some of the solutions. CloudTemer, to start with, they provide a lot of robust capability to achieve the governance at scale solution. One of the things about CloudTemer is that CloudTemer actually was developed with AWS professional services providing a lot of input to what we were hearing from our customers, right? And they implemented this solution, which essentially looks at all the 3 things that we've been talking about, right? So that's definitely one of the solution options for you to look at. So Exacta, as I said, there is a separate talk from Telos that is happening that I highly recommend if you want to attend that. And one of the things about Exacta that is really good, it's both on the cloud and off the cloud, right? So it is available in multiple formats. It's a governance, risk, and compliance tool. It fits in very well with AWS, the way it is integrated with our APIs. And you can do a SaaS, you can do a private SaaS, you can do an Amazon machine image-based solution as well. So works very well. And as I said, it is hybrid in nature, so you can have Exacta running in your data center and have it manage the cloud, or the other way around, right? So it's definitely the option there. The other one is Cloud Conformity. So Cloud Conformity, again, provides the same level of control with regards to the account management. So they are very much aligned to the AWS well-architected framework, more than 451 plus security controls built in, which it will monitor against and provide you recommendations, very, very prescriptive recommendations that you can get from cloud conformity. So you'll see differences between different vendors, and I said, some of them would have access to enforce, some of them would only have the ability to provide you the guidance, and then you have to manually take an action or build your own functions using Lambda if you want to add any automation. So same applies for cost optimization. It's not cost enforcement, it's cost optimization. They can help you look at your budget, help you save depending on how your usage is. They provide you guidance on that as well, and then gives you a real-time forecasting. So a really neat tool to provide you guidance on that. And the last one is security and compliance. So one of the good things that I like about this particular tool is that not only it has built-in security and compliance for CIS and PCI DSS and HIPAA and so on, but it also gives you the ability to add more of your security policies and rules if you want continuous monitoring to be done, right? So it has that flexibility for you to add those controls. So next steps, right? So one of the good things for today is that we happen to have out of the 3 partners that I talked about, 2 of them are present over here. So feel free to talk to them, get hold of them. If you want to talk about your governance at scale solution, it's definitely they will be able to provide more information with regards to your individual requirements. We also have our professional services team and our architects outside. Feel free to get hold of them, and they definitely will be able to provide you more guidance on how to adopt the solution. As I said in the beginning, we do have a great white paper on it, which has more details. It has an appendix which talks about the criteria that you can evaluate yourself against. And also, feel free to grab hold of me after the session. More than happy to provide any details which can help you in your objective. So with that, we come to an end of this. So I think we have the session feedback. So please do take the time to provide your session feedback. And I hope this was a useful session for you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ankush, for the insights. We already have some survey completion winners from the first 2 sessions, we're going to flash the names in the next 3 minutes with the winners from the 3rd session, which is Ankush's session. So this is your chance to win some limited edition swag. So fill out that survey, and we will have the final winners' names on screen shortly. For the rest of you, lunch commences shortly and resumes again at 2 p.m. So see you back here for Peter Shi's session at 2 p.m. And in the meantime, Jane and Celeste will be tapping your smart badges if you want a copy of the PDF deck. Thank you.